We should be good to go.
Sorry, 1 second. Got a little.
Welcome, everyone.
Sorry about that. Gotta love tech issues. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. For those of you who don't know me, I see some unfamiliar names on the call, which is really exciting.
I think Emily froze. Oh, you're back, Em. You're good.
It's one of those days, guys. All right, am I back?
Yeah, you're good.
All right, I'm gonna restart. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Weber, Senior Director of Programs and Community Investment at the Lake County Community Foundation. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. I'm joined by my colleague Quetzali Gomez, our Senior Program Associate, and Chris Schneider and Ben Opp from HR Source. So we are so excited to share more about this exciting new program under our Technical Assistance Fund to provide Lake County nonprofits with HR support. This is something that came up in the survey that we did a few summers ago as a need across the sector. So we are grateful for the opportunity to bring you all some support around this. Um, our partner in this work, HR Source, is going to provide some education for us this morning around common HR issues, and we'll also tell you a little bit more about the program. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Chris to talk a little bit more about their work.
Thank you, Emily. Really appreciate everyone coming today. I'm Chris Schneider. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships for HR Source in Downers Grove, Illinois. We are a not-for-profit employers association. We provide HR assistance, legal support, access to great compensation, survey data, and then lots of training and organizational development opportunities to a growing membership of about 1,300 companies and organizations, mostly around the Chicago area. Over time, our demographic has changed to include many, many not-for-profits, and some relationships have formed from that, this being the most recent example, but we've also worked with other funding agencies like the Community Memorial Foundation. And we try to provide advice and assistance and help employers where they're at. In opposed to us providing just an overview and promotion of our services, we thought the best way to sort of engage with folks was to actually show you some of the value that we can bring to your organization, which is why we have Ben. He's our senior hotline and content advisor to present on a few common HR topics, and we'll have a special guest as well. So I'm going to duck out and introduce you to Ben. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Emily and Katsali. It's so great to be with all of you folks today. I know it's the weather has improved here. I'm on the near south side of the city. I heard about some nasty thunderstorms elsewhere, so I'm glad that appreciate you all joining us in bad weather. Hopefully you're cozy and comfortable and ready for some HR today, which I find very exciting, and hopefully you will as well. As Chris said, my name is Ben. My title is HR Hotline and Content Advisor. I spend most of my days advising our members, HR Source members, on all manner of HR stuff. And we're going to go through 5 topics today. We've called this 5 tips to find and keep better employees. I am going to encourage and would love your participation at different points throughout the session. So if you want to get that chat window open and ready to go, I would love to get some ideas and some feedback from you along the way. I want to tell you just a little bit about me so you know who this guy is. What is this thing? If you know what musical instrument I am playing in this picture, put it in the chat. That's our very first interaction. I started my career as a professional musician. I did not begin in HR. And like all of you know that this is a bassoon, which is so amazing. So thank you for being so musically informed. I spent a few years as a professional bassoonist. My big claim to fame, actually as a saxophonist, was I got to play the Dave Brubeck tune Take Five, which you may know, with Dave at the piano on stage in concert. I will tell that story to anybody who wants to hear it after the fact. It's pretty cool. Been married for 15 years to my amazing wife, Sam. 2 awesome kids. This is us in St. Louis at the Chess. It's the Chess Hall of Fame, and they have the world's largest chess piece, which is quite large and very worth visiting. So that's me. I am approachable. I am not scary. I look forward to working with lots of you, hopefully, as HR Source members. But let's get into it here. We're going to start talking about recruiting, which often comes up as sort of like the hottest issue in HR when I'm talking to our members. And I want to start talking about recruiting by talking to you about cars. And you're wondering, Ben, where are you going with this? And I promise that I will land the plane or land the cars, perhaps the better metaphor. So when you bought your last car, you probably got one of these, an owner's manual. Maybe it was in the glove box. Maybe you had to ask for it. What's in this thing, right? It's got a bunch of technical information about the car. It's 300 pages long, specifications, maintenance procedures, how much fuel fits in the gas tank, the engine displacement, all of this very important information that you need in as a vehicle owner to properly maintain and use your car. But I want you to think about the purpose of this document as opposed to a car commercial, something very different, right? If you watch network, I don't know if anybody watches network TV anymore, broadcast TV, but maybe you've seen a car commercial recently. This is a very different way of presenting the same item, right? This is very focused on not the technical specs, but the experience of owning and driving the car. Maybe there's this scene where you're driving in traffic and somebody darts across the crosswalk and the automatic brakes kick in and save the day. Or you're off-roading in the desert like this Rivian owner seems to be doing. It's about the excitement and the experience of owning and driving that car. What does this have to do with recruitment? I want to use this as a metaphor. The owner's manual, that tech spec document, think about that as a job description. This is a technical document, a page or two in length, perhaps not 300 pages, that has all of the important information about a job, essential functions of the job, maybe required education and experience or certifications. This is critically important, but it's not very exciting. It's not compelling. But what is compelling is a car commercial, and I want to connect that to a job posting. So back in the day, most organizations, when they were recruiting, they would take a job description and just throw it online, put it on Indeed, copy paste, and they would get a good number of applicants and maybe would be successful in a search. Those days are over. We now need to be thinking about a job posting as a piece of marketing that really sells the experience of the job, what it's like, helping a candidate to put themselves behind the wheel, if you will, and really have a sense of what it would be like to work for you. So how do we do that, right? That's the question. How do we write better job postings? And I will start by saying, if you're currently doing that copy paste, that's a great place to start. We need to be writing better, more exciting, more engaging job postings. So a few tips for how to do this. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to proofread. And you might be wondering why. And I will show you a real job posting, real screenshot from the internet that will demonstrate this. Are you ready? Here it is. This is why you need to proofread. As my colleague Kat Kibben, who found this on the internet, says, you're only one F away. So please make sure that you are very careful as you review these and you're putting something out on the internet that is correct and not missing any letters. But to be a little more serious, this is marketing. We need to think about this as a marketing piece. You could even engage your marketing department or your person who helps you with marketing the organization to think about, how do we sell this job to a candidate? How do we get them excited? How do we find the person who will get really pumped? A really great tactical way to do this is this question, and I stole this from Kat Kibben, who does wonderful work in the recruiting space, to think about this: every day you will. We can apply this to our shift leader job posting that we have in front of us here. If you read what's in there, it's relatively small. This is a shift leader management position. It says driving excellence in customer service, restaurant operations. That's pretty job description-y. It's fairly vague. So if you think about every day you will, maybe you come up with something like every day you will ensure that the restaurant is a welcoming place for customers. Every day you will make sure we have the supplies, the food, the sporks that go out, everything we need for our customers to be able to have a great experience. You start to paint a picture of teamwork and leadership and delivering excellence. And suddenly it's a lot more interesting, right? It feels a little bit more like a marketing piece. So, every day you will is a great way to get into this. However, there is a danger in marketing your job postings in this way. The danger is you start to highlight all the good things about the job and you start to gloss over the difficult and not so great things about the job, right? Nonprofit space, there are hard things about working in your industry, right? And we need to make sure that people know that we tell them the truth about the job. So this is the other side of the coin. To illustrate this, I'm going to show you a picture of my basement. So this is what my basement looked like when I bought my house in 2018 here on the near south side of Chicago. It's a finished basement. It's a walkout basement. So there's a door. We call it a mother-in-law unit, if you've heard that term here in the city. And as soon as I moved in, I realized, my gosh, this is like a separate, sort of a separate unit. It's got its own door. This could make a great Airbnb. And I pitched this to my wife, and she very graciously allowed me to pursue this. And so we invested some money, some time, and we renovated our basement, and it turned out looking like this a few months later. Quite a bit better, you would say. And even more impressive, I think, is the bathroom. So this is what the bathroom looked like when we moved in. It was rough. I'm going to be honest with you. And after some work, we got it to here. Quite a bit better. Now, here's the thing about this. I can dress this up as much as I want, but it's still a Chicago basement. And Chicago basements have issues, right? They're cold in the winter. There's bugs. I can't prevent the house centipedes, right? And they're friendly. They eat all the things you don't want in your house, but they're terrifying for people from California who've never seen one before. They don't know what to do. So it's a 130-year-old house. The doors don't all close properly. It's got quirks. And that was one of the big concerns my friends had was like, I don't think this is going to work. It's still a basement. You've made it look better, but it still has all of those same issues. And so when we launched this Airbnb, we decided we're just going to tell the truth. We're going to disclose everything. And so I wrote a listing that said, look, there's some great stuff about this place. You're a mile from the White Sox. You're a block from public transit. You're 15 minutes from downtown. But it's going to be cold in the winter no matter what I do. You're going to see some, multi-legged friends in the summer and in the spring. You're going to hear my kids. At the time we had young kids. You're going to hear them running around upstairs. They're going to wake you up at 6 in the morning. And we told all of that, all those truths to our potential guests, right? All the reasons why they didn't want to book our Airbnb. How did that work out for us? Well, after about 5 years of operation, we closed down. We needed the space for ourselves. And this is where we landed. We had a 4.96 out of 5. If you're an Airbnb user, you'll recognize that as being an outstanding rating. We were super hosts the whole time. Why did this work? Even with the bugs and the cold and the basement. It worked because we told the truth. We found guests who valued the upsides of our space, and there were many, and who didn't care about the downsides of our space. We found those people by telling the truth. And I want you to do the same thing when you recruit. I want you to tell all the truth about the great things about the job. In your space, you can talk about mission, you can talk about impact, you can talk about how exciting it is to see the work of the nonprofit being done in the community. But you got to tell them the truth about the downsides. And I'm sure there are some. But when you do that, you're going to find the people who love the upsides and don't care about the downsides. And that feels scary to be openly disclosing, these things about the job that aren't great. But I promise you, it will help you find the right candidates who are going to stick with you in the long term. Now, I want to say one other thing about recruiting before we go on to a few other topics. Back to our Taco Bell posting, something is missing from this job posting, and that is the pay. It is not listed. And that is now in Illinois unlawful. And I want to make sure you folks know about this. So, effective January 1st of last year, so we're now 18 months into this, we have a pay transparency law for employers that have 15 or more employees. And I recognize there are probably some of you from small organizations where you actually don't have to comply with this requirement. But if you're 15 plus, you do have to include a bona fide pay range in your job postings from X dollars to Y dollars. You need to include some information about the benefits that you offer. And if you post a job externally to the open world, you also have to make your current employees aware of that opening within 14 days of the external post. So just want to make sure you know about this. As you know, an HR source member, we would be more than happy to walk you through, support you. We have a field guide on this topic to get you lots of details on how to implement this, but want to make sure you're aware. Okay, so some takeaways from recruiting. Think about your job posting like a car commercial. It needs to sell the job. It needs to really help the candidate imagine themselves in that job, not just, we don't want them to just read a technical list, a job description on the internet. At the same time, as you're selling it, you got to tell the truth. You have to make sure the downsides are right out there in public, and that's going to help you find those great candidates. They're going to stick with you. And if you're in Illinois, if you're 15 plus employees, you got to get that pay range and benefits information in that job posting as well. Okay, that was recruiting. We spent a good chunk of time. We're going to go a little bit faster through some of these other topics. Number two, I want to talk about kind of what happens after recruiting, which is orientation and onboarding. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to tell you a story, went way too far, to get ourselves into this topic. So I took an HR hotline call from one of our members. This was probably a year ago. This is a nonprofit social service organization. And one of the things they do is they operate group homes out in the community. And they were having a terrible time with turnover in a particular job. This was a night shift group home supervisor role. So somebody who is working the night shift at the group home, making sure everything's okay. They said they were having 50% turnover within the first 30 days of hiring, which is just huge. Like something is very wrong. So I asked them, tell me about orientation and onboarding for this job. What does that look like? And they said, well, we make a hire. We bring that new hire into our office for maybe 30 minutes or so. We bring them in the afternoon so that because their shift is going to start, at late afternoon, early evening. We do paperwork with them. We do an I-9, and we give them a key and we give them an address and we send them off to their first shift to work at the group home. And I said, wait a minute. You're giving this person who you're sending into a group home setting, a very difficult setting, 30 minutes of training and onboarding. You're handing them a key and you're sending them off to their first shift. And they said, yes. And I said, I think that's the problem. I think you're sending folks into a scenario that they're totally unprepared for. They're terrified. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to begin doing this job. And so I want to kind of highlight that. It's a true story to talk about retention as really being an output of how good is your orientation and your onboarding process. That retention, which we think of as a problem later in the employment relationship, maybe at the 6-month or 12-month mark, that starts on day one. So how do we do this better? How do we retain employees and we start that right away? Let's talk about orientation and onboarding, which are two different things. Orientation, I would define as the first day and maybe the first week of employment, where somebody is really fresh. They're getting to know the organization. Some of the things that I think matter a lot in that first day, that first week. First of all, give these people face time. Get them in front of your executive director and your leadership team. Introduce them to all the people they'll be collaborating with. Make sure that they know everybody's name, that there's some level of familiarity. Give them a buddy, give them somebody who can help them with all their little questions about where I park and, can I use the microwave and where do you keep the coffee? So they don't have to bother their supervisor, but they also have somebody who's right there, who's supportive and friendly, and be really careful about who you choose for that role because that person will be very influential, either in a positive way or maybe in a negative way if you pick the wrong person. You want to give them priorities. You want them to not be overwhelmed, but also not be bored. So maybe they've got some training, online training to do. Maybe they set up their voicemail and their email. Give them a priority order of tasks and a sense of direction so they know what they're supposed to be doing. And if you're a really savvy organization, you might think about getting them into some Clifton Strengths or other type of assessment to help them understand how they're going to fit in with the rest of the team and give them some tools for talking about that as they meet people. So that's the first day, first week. That's orientation, right? Way more than 30 minutes and a key to the group home. Um, then we got to talk about onboarding. The onboarding is a month, maybe to a whole year. It's a long time. This is where we really get this person embedded in the role and in the organization. This is where we do training, not just kind of initial orientation, but we teach them how to do the job. We give them a clear, actionable plan with milestones and checkpoints for where they need to be in their skills along the way. We're checking in with that employee regularly. That supervisor is doing that. For those of you who know this reference, same bat time, same bat channel, a consistent check-in, consistent agenda and concept so that both the manager and the employee have an opportunity to share concerns and feedback and communicate. And that is a great place to begin giving them performance feedback. And you can do that immediately. A lot of employers wait 30, 60, 90, or even 180 days before they start addressing problems. If there's an issue with performance, we can start talking about that immediately. And we're going to get into that part of kind of in more detail a little bit later in the talk. Okay, so a few takeaways from orientation and onboarding. Um, I just want to underscore that retention, keeping employees with you, starts on the day you hire them. This is not something you think about later. It's something you think about immediately. That orientation period, that first day or first week is critical to their success, but that long-term plan of training, maybe that even a full first year is even more critical. I'm making up a word on my slide for fun. Both of these, they work hand in hand to keep people engaged and drive retention for your organization. Let's go on to some people problems. Everybody's got them. That is my mantra here. I take, again, a ton of calls on our HR hotline from our members, and so many questions that I hear start like this. The member will say, so we've got this employee, they've been with us for maybe 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, a really long time. They've been a problem the whole time, and now we don't know how to fix it. Like it's time, we have to address this, but we just don't even know where to begin. Or the member will call and say, we hired this new person a couple of months ago, and like since day 3, we've been pretty convinced this isn't working, but we don't know how to address it, right? We wanted to give them more time. We wanted to be patient and compassionate, but this is not working. So the next question often is, can I fire them? So let me give you some of the questions that I ask those members when they call with these situations and they want to just be done. First of all, I want to know, have you talked to the employee about this problem? Do they even know that this is an issue? Or is this something we've tolerated for 30 years and we've never even told them that it's an issue? And if we haven't talked to them, that's where we have to start. We have to have a conversation. I want to know, have they taken progressive discipline steps, which is fancy HR language for taking action, having conversations that get progressively more serious. Maybe we start with just a simple conversation. Say, you show up late 3 times a week. I know it's been going on a long time, but it's got to stop, right? The next time, maybe we say, hey, we're giving you a formal warning, a verbal warning, and then maybe a written warning, and then maybe a final warning. And there's various ways you can do that. But is there documented progressive discipline? I want to know if we've talked to this employee about the possibility of termination. Do they even know that this is serious enough that they could actually lose their job over this? And I also want to know how you've handled similar situations, what we call precedent. Have you tolerated stuff in the past? Have you been a little more intense about addressing it in the past? That's all going to be relevant to how we approach this. Now, that seems daunting, right? If maybe you haven't done any of those things, but there's hope. There's always hope that we can resolve this. And so I want to give you a framework for each of these scenarios for how you start to address this problem. So first of all, that long-term employee, been a problem forever. We haven't addressed it. What do you do? I think a great tactical way to approach this, and I stole this from one of our members who coined this phrase, is an expectations reset. We sit down with that person, we say, look, this has been a problem for a long time. We should have addressed it a long time ago. We didn't. That's on us. But we're addressing it now. We're setting a new expectation for you that from today forward, we need your behavior, your conduct, your performance, your attendance, whatever, to change. We put that in writing with written goals, clear expectations, follow it up in an email so that they know exactly what's what. We clarify when there's questions, we coach that person, and we hold them accountable. And maybe they make a change, and maybe they don't. And then we can enter that progressive discipline phase if we need to. Now, with a new hire, it's kind of the same idea, except we don't need to reset expectations. We just need to set them. We need to make sure this person knows what is expected from them. A great place to do this is that regular check-in pulse that I mentioned as part of that onboarding and orientation plan. Maybe weekly, maybe every couple of weeks, there's a time and a place where that manager and that employee get together and they can have these conversations. Again, written goals and expectations, create clarity, and hold that person accountable. It sounds easy. It's not so easy in real life. But we coach our members through these kinds of scenarios probably 3 or 4 times a day. We're taking these kinds of calls, very common and very challenging. Now, I want to address one other issue here, which is that in most situations where the employee is an issue, I want to ask, but what's going on with the manager? Why hasn't the manager addressed this already? Why is this being tolerated? Is the manager really skilled up? Do they have what it takes to do this? And the reality is that a lot of managers were promoted out of an individual contributor role. They weren't trained and they have no idea what they're doing. And it's not their fault. They just never received really quality management or supervision training. They are not equipped to have tough conversations. Maybe they're afraid of confrontation. Maybe they're overly confrontational, right? Because they're scared. They don't know how to productively address problems with their employees. And so one of the key elements here, especially in a growing organization, if you're an HR pro, if you're a founder, if you're an executive director, you're good at this already. You know how to manage people and communicate well. You got to replicate those skills in the organization. Training is a great way to do that. Our most popular training course here at HR Source that we offer to our members is a new manager boot camp where we bring a group of 15 managers on site. They're here for 3 days. They learn kind of textbook supervision skills, and then they get to apply them in a real world setting through simulation and role play. So when they walk out of that training, they've coached somebody, they've interviewed, they've disciplined, they've even terminated somebody in a simulated setting. And that is so helpful for them to take that skill forward and be able to apply it in real life. So, a few takeaways from people problems. Progressive discipline is so important. We can never gloss over that, and making sure that we're giving folks a real opportunity to improve and clearly documenting that process. Takes me right into the second one, which is that setting clear expectations is the key to accountability, holding people accountable. And the manager is probably part of the issue. We always want to look at, does the manager also need some coaching and some skilling up to be able to handle this better? Number four, we're rounding the bases here. I want to talk about accommodations. And we're not talking about my Airbnb. That's my accommodations joke for the day. I see at least one smile, so thank you for that. And I'm going to give you a pop quiz on this one. So here's a little interactivity for you. Get in that chat. Um, the law requires you to make reasonable accommodations in the employment setting around what four issues? What four things can employees come to you and say, I need an accommodation about this? If you know one or all four, throw them in the chat. Let's see if we can get you to all of them. I'm going to give you a few seconds to think. Health issues. Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. I would just relabel that as disability. And awesome. We've got the disability in the chat. That is one. There are three others. Can you think of them? I'll give you a few more seconds and then I will throw them up on the screen. So disability is that number one. Pregnancy, which is distinct from disability. Pregnancy is not actually a disability. Religion or sincerely held religious belief, to put it in its full terminology. And here in Illinois, we have a law that protects victims of violence, primarily applying to domestic violence situations, also can receive reasonable accommodations. So those are the categories to watch out for. I want to hone in on one specific category that is just, we get a ton of questions about this in the last year or two, which is mental health conditions related to disability. So I want to ask you, what proportion of adults do you think will have a diagnosable mental health condition this year? What is that statistic? Throw some guesses in the chat for me. Let me see what you think. I've got an 85%. I've got a 30%. Oh, that's very close. I'll give you that hint. So not quite 85, but it is 1 in 5 or 20% of adults are going to have a diagnosable mental health condition. So not as high maybe as you might imagine, but that's a huge number, right? In any 5 employees, one of them statistically is going to have something that is they're struggling with. That's a challenge. So I bring this up just to highlight that disability is often hidden. It is not something that we can necessarily see on the surface. And the challenge then is to engage that in the right way. So I want to walk you really quickly through a framework for accommodations. The most important thing, the most challenging thing in a small organization is recognizing a request for an accommodation. As a classic example from case law, where we've got like a manager and an employee. They're hanging out at the water cooler. I don't know what the modern water cooler replacement is yet. And the employee says, you're just having a conversation, right? It's casual. Employee says, man, I've been feeling kind of sad lately and stressed out, and I really wish I could just take some time off and work on that. The employee did not use the word accommodation. They didn't talk about a disability necessarily. But a court found that that was a request for an accommodation because that employee identified something that sounds like it could be a disability. Maybe there's depression there. And they made a request, which is for some leave. So the key element here is the people on the boots on the ground, your managers, your supervisors, we need them to have that training to hear that statement from their employee and go, huh, I wonder. And they can say, oh, hey, was that something you want to talk to HR about and maybe see what your options are? If that's something that something we could do to help and kick that off. Maybe they're having that conversation. Maybe they're letting HR know, hey, why don't you talk to Sally? Sally, I think, might be having some challenges and we want to check in with her. That is the key in the entry point to this. Once we've recognized a potential need for accommodation, we got to go through this thing called the interactive process, which is, again, fancy HR language for having a conversation with this person, asking them, hey, what are you looking for? What can we do to help you? And then, depending on what they say, we might say, hey, let's get some documentation, maybe from a physician, to support your request. We want to understand exactly what it is you can or can't do. We want to understand what your need is, and we want to kind of authenticate this and make sure that it's a genuine thing. There are folks out there who abuse this process, right? We always want to assume in good faith every employee is looking for something, and there are so many genuine requests. But we can and should require a little bit of authentication when it's appropriate. And then we can go through an analysis to determine this thing this person's asking for, is it reasonable? Can we do this without it being overly disruptive, without it being overly costly? Or is this undue hardship? Is this just so difficult, so disruptive to organizational operations that it would be too much of a problem? And that's where you can give us a call and we will help you work through that process to determine, is it reasonable? We can get an attorney on the line. They can help you. We also have some great sample paperwork for you to use, that medical inquiry form in the documentation step. So we support our members through this process, again, every day, very, very common. I'm always happy to help with these issues. A few takeaways here. Accommodation needs are common, right? Mental health, especially 1 in 5. Training your managers is so important, so critical, so that they know what to do in these situations, how to recognize those requests. And finally, got to go through that interactive process. This isn't just a approved or denied type of a thing. We have to work through that conversation with the employee and find something that works for everybody. We made it to our final point, which is not a super happy one, workplace harassment, but I promise I have a good story for you on this one. This is not my story, but it is a true one from HR Source. We took a call once from a member. They called and they said, I have 2 employees, 2 women who work in an office together, and they have come forward and complained about the production supervisor. This is like a manufacturing setting. And they said the production supervisor almost every day, he walks by our office, which is on the way to the production floor. And as he goes by, he lets loose the most horrific fart imaginable. Okay, this is a real thing. And these employees feel they are being targeted and that they are being harassed because he doesn't do this to anybody else. It's just them and it's consistent and it's almost every day. Again, real situation. So what would you do if you got this request, this complaint, right? Is it harassment? Could it possibly be? So let's talk about that just for a minute. Harassment from a legal perspective has to involve some kind of protected class issue, meaning a personal characteristic that's protected by law. And there's a whole bunch of these. The list on the screen, these are federally protected. And here in Illinois, we have a bunch more. And in the city of Chicago, there's another list that extends that. So it gets pretty long. But that's a definition that there needs to be severe, pervasive, unwanted conduct that is connected to a protected class. Not all harassment claims are actually harassment. It could be something simpler. It could be bullying. It could be just somebody behaving badly, somebody being a jerk. That's very possible. So how do you figure out, is it harassment? You have to do an investigation. You need to do some fact finding. You talk to the people who complained. You talk to the person who has been accused. You talk to witnesses. You try to figure out what is the truth of this situation, right? Again, something we support our members with all the time. We have a field guide on this topic. Our attorneys also jump in sometimes and can actually do these investigations when necessary. Investigations, they are tricky, but we have to do them. We have to take these claims seriously, even if the complaint sounds kind of silly. And this one sounds a little silly, right? We have to take it seriously. We have to perform that investigation. We want to generate a report of our findings. And if corrective action is necessary, we need to document what we did to prevent this from happening again, right? So what are some next steps here? We've got to interview the complainant, interview the accused. We can ask them, who else should I talk to? Are there any witnesses? In this particular story, eyewitnesses, maybe nose witnesses. I'm not sure how you would even go about this. But that's the way we have to approach it. We always have to take it very seriously. So you're probably wondering what happened. And I have actually an ending to this story. We don't always hear the end of the story in our work. The HR person investigated this, and when they talked to the accused individual, the production supervisor, he was very embarrassed, and he disclosed that he has some gastrointestinal challenges. And when he sits for a while, there's kind of a buildup of pressure. And when he stands up and walks by these ladies' office to the production floor, there is a natural release of that pressure. So the poor guy was just kind of crop dusting his way across the office to the production floor. And these poor folks were in the way as sort of collateral damage. Simple solution, they said, look, when you stand up after you've sat for a while, why don't you go to the far end of the office, go to the copy room, go to where we keep the staples, do some laps, and then come around and walk through, solve the problem. Everybody's happy. This was not a harassment issue, but taking it seriously, investigating it still important. So, some takeaways. Not everything is harassment. Always got to take it seriously, though, because it might be, and definitely get some help. These are challenging, tricky, he said, she said situations in many cases. HR Source, we help and support in a variety of ways our members in these situations all the time, and we would love to be able to help you as well. That is it for my talking at you about HR stuff. So hopefully that was fun. I delivered on the entertainment. We're going to pivot now, and we're going to hear from a friend of HR Source, a current HR Source member who is also a nonprofit leader in Lake County. And that is Laura Calvert from Eloa Farm Foundation. Laura, I see you. Thank you so much for being here. You want to say hi?
Yeah, hey everyone. It's really nice to see some familiar faces and names here. And thank you, Ben, for the invitation to be here today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we brought Laura in here to give you just a little bit of a firsthand account of what it's like to be an HR Source member, how it's helpful, how it's useful. And Laura, I am finding the questions I said I would ask you. Here they are. I've located them, or else I'm just going to make them up. So Laura, how long has your organization been a member of HR Source?
So I believe we've been a member for about 2 full years now. So if that's right, it's kind of
Yeah,
hard to remember. It feels like you've always been a support, but
we we've always feels like it's been forever. I love it.
yeah.
Um, Laura, what HR Source service membership benefit have you found most helpful? Like when you think of us, what's the thing that you go to like, oh my gosh, that's been so great?
I think for me, it's been the hotline and just knowing that you are here as a support. So at Eloa Farm, we've grown significantly in the last 2 to 3 years as an organization. We've almost tripled our workforce size, and we have a lot of new part-time and full-time employees. And we haven't been able to, hire a full-time HR manager or director at Eloa. So we have found like this has been such a helpful support for us, for me and for our management team when we are dealing with compliance issues or discipline issues. It's been really nice, and I love the hotline. Ben and I talk every now and again, and just to know that like, okay, is this policy up to date, or we're having an issue with an employee where we need to implement a progressive discipline action, getting the coaching as well as, understanding the law and the compliance aspect of it has been huge and such a stress relief for me.
One of my favorite things about supporting you, Laura, is the variety of questions. Like I remember a question from a few months ago that involved chickens and a veterinarian, and that was so much fun and interesting to work with. No, and I think I also really appreciate working with you because you're so collaborative. You'll call back a few times kind of as a situation progresses, and we'll get to discuss, oh, here's a new challenge, here's a new twist in the story, and how are we going to respond to it? Which is always a lot of fun. Do you have any kind of sort of quick example or story you can share? And of course, we don't want you to reveal anything confidential or personal about a particular kind of situation where you found us helpful.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's been so many, and I'm trying to think of something that's like not too revealing. But I think, for us in the last 2 years, we had to deal with an employee who we ultimately terminated. And, being able to have some coaching and counseling on like, this is the situation. Should we put somebody on a performance improvement plan or go to termination, just kind of being able to walk through all of that with Ben, who you've been, so gracious and helpful with that. And then, once we made the decision of the action, what was the proper kind of compliant paperwork that needed to happen. And then I just got a lot of great coaching and talking points of, how to have that tough conversation with the employee.
Awesome. No, I remember. Absolutely. Laura, kind of as a parting shot, we've got a bunch of folks on the call here who have an opportunity to apply for this program where they can get a year of membership with us, potentially. What would you say to them about kind of the impetus, what advice would you have for them as they consider this opportunity?
My advice would be to go for it and to apply for it. This has been one of the most helpful support systems that we've brought on to ELOA in our growth in the last couple of years. I know my life would have been a lot more difficult and stressful did I not have it. And I know, all of you all are in leadership positions, and it's really tough to be a leader. And sometimes you don't have other, staff or board members that you can talk to about issues. So having that expert party, that neutral party, that support party to walk you through just the inevitabilities of tough conversations and tough actions at work has really been like such a lifesaver for my mental health at work. So I could not recommend HR Source enough. And that's been such an important support for us when we haven't, just had the capability yet to build an HR department here at ELOA.
Thank you so much, Laura, for joining us, for your time. I know you got to run, you got important stuff to do, but we so appreciate you joining us today. You're awesome.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We'll talk
and
soon.
Good to see you all. Yes. For better or for worse.
For better or for worse. Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
Laura. Awesome. That's it for me. Quetzali, I'm going to pass it over to you. And I think now we're going to hear a little bit about this program and how to apply. Is that right?
Yes, thank you so much, Ben, for that great presentation and for, providing all the great resources as well. So appreciate it. Hi, everyone. For those who hopped on a little later, I'm Quetzali Gomez. I'm the Senior Program Associate here at the Lake County Community Foundation. And as Emily mentioned at the beginning, and also, Ben and Chris, as part of as a second phase of our Technical Assistance Fund at the foundation, we are rolling out this Human Resources Support Program, and the application actually is now open. And I just wanted to provide some information. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Regarding the application and where it could be found, eligibility requirements, all that good stuff. So this is our website at lakecountycf.org. And to find information about the program, you can go into the program section and scroll a little down under capacity building, technical assistance funds, human resource support program here. This is the main page that has all the information about the program, what the program covers. So the Lake County Community Foundation will cover a full 1 year membership for HR Source for up to 15 nonprofit organizations that are in Lake County or serve a large portion of Lake County neighbors. And here you can find a 2-pager that has all of this information as well. Information on the webinar. The recording of the webinar will be available on our website as well shortly after we get off the call. And here is a timeline as well. As I mentioned, it opens today, closes Monday, June 22nd, so in about 2 weeks. And organizations are notified Monday, June 29th. And to apply, you click here. And we try to make it as streamlined as possible. So it just requires some organizational information. Sorry. And address, phone number, budget size, number of full-time staff, part-time staff, and a couple narrative questions just to get just for us to learn a little bit more about the needs that your organization is currently facing as it relates to HR. as well. Um, and then some optional, any other feedback or anything else that would be helpful for us to know as we're reviewing the application as well. And then you can also find, as I mentioned, the two-pager here kind of explains what the Technical Assistance Fund is, this new rollout, a little bit about HR Source and the services that they provide, and what selected organizations will receive. So it's the 1 year sponsored membership to HR Source, the HR hotline, as Ben mentioned, an HR audit, which is a assessment of HR policies and practices that is done in collaboration with HR Source, surveys, trainings, newsletters, HR exchanges, things of that sort. And then we also have an eligibility and selection um, section here as well. So organizations that are 501(c)(3), serving the county residents, not currently holding an existing membership with HR Source or a comparable HR support organization, and demonstrating a commitment to straightening organizational capacity, practices, things of that sort. And a thing to note here, organizations with 199 employers or fewer are eligible, so please note that small to mid-sized organizations may be prioritized during the selection process. And there's also participation expectations, as I mentioned, the timeline. And if you have any questions, feel free to email Emily or myself. Our emails are here on the website page on the two-pager. I'll also include it in the chat and in a follow-up email as well. So yeah, here, let me see if we have any questions. Any questions? I will send all this information via email as well. I can put some things in the chat as if anyone has any questions. Thank you all. Any questions or questions for Ben or Chris from HR Source? Yes, and the application is open, available. So if you are interested in being considered, we would love to see your application. Ben, Chris, I don't know if you have anything else to add. Anything?
I think we just want to say thank you so much for the partnership. We're really excited to just launch this partnership with all of you. We're excited to support some of you and the amazing work that you're doing in the county. So we're here as well. I'm going to drop my email in the chat. If you have questions about the HR content we talked about today or just want to hear more about HR Source, happy to communicate.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. And again, if you have any questions about the application, anything on the website, please feel free to email us. We're happy to help.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.